Joining me from Barnabas Aid, Stephanie Johnson. Stephanie, kia ora. Thanks for your time today.
Good morning.
This is,
Good cold morning. It's
well,
quite
it
quite chilly
is.
out there today.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, Laos, it's in terms of geography, similar to Thailand and Vietnam, etc. However, in
Mm.
terms of its human rights record and in particular the way in which Christians are treated in that part of the world, it's getting records for other reasons.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is such a small minority of Christians. I mean, you're talking about 150,000 Christians in Laos.
Okay.
So that's a really small number. And so on a regular basis, Christians in Laos are kicked out of their villages, forced into the forest. They suffer for their faith quite radically and quite often. So it's a really, really tricky place to be a Christian. But you've got a lot of people who are Christians there who are still strong in their faith despite the persecution, which is encouraging that, people are still living life loud, proud, and with gusto,
Yeah.
regardless of how they're treated by their communities
Of course,
and the government.
yeah. I mean, the official government persecution. I mean, that has changed recently. I understand. I mean, this is a country which is partly dependent on tourism for its economy, so it's got to look nice internationally. Some changes to the law back in what was it, 2019, which
Yeah.
officially said that people could convert.
Yeah, they can, they have the right under this law, this new law, really recently, 2019 is like, it's pretty close, but
Yeah.
the Christians have the right to conduct services. They
Okay.
can preach throughout Laos and then maintain contact with believers in other countries, which is really good for us as well, because
Yeah.
we've got partners on the ground there. So we can help when we need to help.
What about the issue of conversion? Of course, many parts of the world, this is where particularly people of other faiths say, well, you can do your thing, but as soon as you touch other people, and as soon as people from this faith join your faith, that's when the trouble really starts.
Yeah, when that's it. It's just the government will say, yes, there's religious freedom here, you can convert. Um, but it's one of those things where Christians aren't trusted as well. And it's not, you don't have that same kind of extremist persecution that you do in countries like Iran or something like
Yeah.
that, where it's very much you cannot convert, or Muslim background believers are very much persecuted. But in Laos, it's the cities, the bigger areas, it's you wouldn't even know it was an issue, but it's these rural areas where there's a problem. And a lot of it is just from the villages that they're in and people not trusting them. So,
Yeah.
for example, we had four Christian families just recently evicted from their community in northwestern Laos
Yeah.
on just like 2 weeks ago, the 5th and 6th of May, and forced into, again, had to abandon most of their possessions. Their homes were destroyed. I mean, this is happening on a very regular basis.
Hmm. Now, in terms of that, partly motivated by their faith, but I understand there's also a bit of opportunism here. Well, let's drive the Christians out, then we can have their land and their assets, right?
I mean, yeah, that's a big part of it. And why not the Christians? Because they're not, really well taken care of. And so they can get away with it a lot easier because government authorities are very slow to do anything, if anything at all. So it's not really law isn't really well enforced in these areas, which is a big problem.
You mentioned before that you do have connections, you do have partnerships in Laos. Is there anything that they can do about circumstances like this? I suppose we're doing it
Yeah.
today because we're talking about it, but at a local level on the ground, is there much that can be done?
Yeah, so we've got our partners on the ground that we are in contact with, and they've done so much for the Christian community there. There's a rice mill that is funded by Barnabas Aid that produces, I think, 260 tons of rice
Wow.
each year, which is then sent to these communities or these Christians who are evicted from their homes in the villages. So and that rice is one of the staple foods there. We've provided a service center where Christian people can go and learn a new skill,
Hmm.
such as sewing or growing mushrooms. So there's all these different things that we're doing in Laos to help the Christian communities there. So um, teaching Christian women, we have one Christian woman named Dowell who had a rough go at life from the get-go. I mean, her husband was abusive, her father was an alcoholic,
Yeah.
and her faith stayed strong. And so when she was forced to leave her husband, she was put in contact. She was literally praying when a pastor showed up at her house.
Wow.
And there's a great video that we have on our YouTube, Barnabas Stories, if you want to check it out. But she talks about how she was praying, and this pastor came to her house and said, "Look, there's something we can do to help you," and then directed her to the service center. And now she's actually teaching there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's a really cool story about how someone who was found by one of our partners and now is thriving. She can afford to buy food for her family. I mean, part of her story is that she was so poor and so hungry she had to steal food at one point.
Wow.
So I mean, that's serious desperation right there. And now at the skill center, she's helping to teach other people, which is really cool to see how um, that cold kind of pay it forward
Yep.
thing happens. She was helped, and so she wants to help others. So it's really cool to see stories like that in the midst of the tragedy of, these 4 or 5 families who were evicted from their
Yeah.
homes. There's still hope for them, you know, and that's where it's so important for us as Christians here in New Zealand to pray and be a reminder to them that they aren't alone, that there is people who care about them. And, I always tell you, Andrew, that my goal in working for Barnabas Aid New Zealand is that every Christian in New Zealand prays for the persecuted church.
Yep.
And I really think that that's possible, that we can all start to pray for Christians like Dow, for these 4 families who were evicted from their homes and their homes were destroyed. And, those things that happen that we can do. Prayer is powerful and effective.
Yeah.
It says that in James, So yeah, let's pray. Let's come alongside them. Let's give if we have the money and the funds to do so, because Barnabas is doing so many projects in Laos that, we can help be a solution to the problem.
We can be an answer to our own prayers in that regard. And I love it that, yes, there are some awful things happening around the world, and Barnabas Aid certainly doesn't shy away from that. But for every story like that, there's another faith-filled, hope-centered story of what God is doing, and the light shows more brightly in the darkness, perhaps. These stories of faith and transformation, so remarkable, and I certainly would encourage people to check out the YouTube page there. And as you say, a partner prayerfully and financially with the good work that Barnabas Aid is doing. Stephanie, thank you so much for the stories that you guys tell, for the hope and the faith that you bring. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.